Hey folks, we're live again. We're going to continue our cartography here for the Eberron 8th level adventure, Crystals of Mabar. This is the book cover. I think we crafted this like around episode, I want to say the mid-30s. We're like at episode 78 now. Jeez, bro. But yeah, I think we finished the book cover around, like around episode 34, 35, something like that. Let me check my signal here real quick to make sure I'm coming through clean. Let me check my signal here real quick to make... Sounds like I'm coming through A-okay. Hey, if you follow me on Twitter, I've just posted that I'm live on Twitter, so follow me there to find out when I do things like this, which is typically every Monday night. And on top of that, let me just hit my Discord channels here real fast, and then we'll dive back into it for today. Over the past number of weeks, we have been working on the cemetery map. Hold on, let's queue up the cemetery map for you guys to gaze in the wide-eyed wonder at the joy we have produced. But yeah, so this is coming along nicely. It's a 52 inches by 58 inch map space on a virtual tabletop that sits comfortably. With a 100 DPI resolution. Actually, we dropped it down to a 70 DPI resolution so that it just automatically calibrates to the VTT space that is the default go-to for OBS DMsGuild. We also have a black and white version of it that fits on 11 by 17 pages. It's actually here. I'll show you guys again. I've got everything up and running, so let me flip the view here real fast on where we're at and what we're doing. Chunk. Okay, great. If we go into our map grid, and I've seen this before. So you got these pages there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by 14 inches here. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 of them total. So you take in 11 by 17 here. Let's show you what I'm talking about here real quick, so you really get it. So here's the black and white version of the map. Like this as far as like line art is done, this is good. I'm not gonna like heavy texture this and do all that stuff because the whole point of a black and white line art map for print is to make it a low to not eat up a shitload of your ink when you're feeding these things through. So a legal sheet is 11 inches by 17 inches, and you get a half-inch border around each side, which you can trim off if you want. So that leaves you with the half-inch margins. It's 10 inches by 16 active area, but this eats up 14 of it. So you have about 2.5 inches at the top of the thing, a half-inch bottom, a half-inch side. So you can just trim those off real quick, and then lay this thing out on your kitchen table, the full glory of it if you want to. Or if you're like using ChessX 48 by 36 inch map spaces, you can go 30 inches here by 42 inches here. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can fit these nine maps onto one of those 48 by 36 ChessX maps. And like the scrolls that you can roll up, like the vellum, or what? It's not vellum. It's whatever that material is, that dry erase stuff. Anyway, I've used ChessX for years, and so yeah, you can fit 9 of the pages on that ChessX. You can just like pin them down or tape them, or just drop them on your table if you want. But obviously, in a virtual tabletop space, you don't have to worry about breaking it up with 75 with a 70 dot DPI, say on roll 20. This is actually a pretty low impact map. God, what is our size here? Yeah, it's 58 by 5200 pixels. Pretty low expense, and then we can go to save as. Let's see what the file size on this guy is right now. We're using this one. It is 304 megabytes. Holy biscuits! That's actually pretty significant. But once we merge it down into a flat JPEG, it'll be a lot lower file. But obviously, I've got a Hummer of a computer, so let's just get back to work. Enough to do. Last thing, you can check down in the description down below. There is a Hold on, let me grab this. There's a link to DMsGuild stuff. I publish on the DMsGuild pretty regularly. This will also be on the DMsGuild since it's Eberron. It has to be on the DMsGuild. But pretty much everything that I publish on the DMsGuild is 100% free to read. You can read the whole thing. You can run a 1 to 20 level campaign. Mine typically take about 250 hours to complete from level 1 to 20 to retire. If you're like doing a 3.5 hour session each week, it takes about anywhere from 52 to 60 weeks to complete, depending on how much vacation and sick time your team has. But having said that, you can go down, you can click on those books. It's like 5 or 6 books in that bundle. They're 35% off, so crazy discount. But on top of that, you can read the whole thing. You can actually buy them to use them, but I generally find that when people download, like say the Spellpoint Warlocks, for example, is free. You download it, you check it out, you use it, it works great, and then a couple days later, I end up seeing somebody buy a bunch of those books. So I mean, check it out. It's apparently people think they're really cool. I certainly think they're cool, but that's just like one of the small. That's just a sample of the kind of stuff that I produce. So hey, Hornetico, it's good to see you, my man. So we are going to work on texture. Let's go ahead and check out one of our other maps to see what our end goal is going to be. Let's yeah, we like the Drowned Fort. Let's grab the Drowned Fort map. This one's already finished. Same adventure, nearby area inside the manifest zone. But here's all the texturing that we'll be doing. All these little gritty crystals. You can see out here on the border here, you can see all this crystal grit that we've got going on out here. You can see that same grit in the soil here that we've already completed. So now we get to go through and we get to do all the flagstones, just like we have here with all this grit. And then once we get done with the flagstones, we get to work on the obstacles, like the walls and stuff that you can't just walk. You can't just you climb over this stuff, I suppose. But it creates an obstacle to like a visual obstacle, and you can't shoot through it and stuff like that. So, but right now we're going to just focus on these crystals. So we're going to grab our crystal brush. It's around here somewhere. Hold on. Where is our crystal brush? There you am. And let's see, these are our walls. And here's our flagstones. So we have all this soil underneath the flagstones. So when we built the flagstones, we just basically layered the color over them. That's how we got to that point. But now I want to go to here. I want to do like a little bit more. Yeah, like that. That's how we build these things. And I think I want to get down to like a little too small. Let's go check out the map real quick just to remember the process. What do you got saying here? Haven't tuned in for a while. The maps have changed quite a bit. Yeah, they've evolved. That is for sure, my friend. We finished the Citadel of Light this morning. You can check out the Spelljammer stream from this morning to see how that turned out, which fucking great. Oh, man, that tastes good. All right, let's set a 20-minute timer so we can keep track of where we're at. We don't get too lost. Yeah, the topside entrance is done. The Drowned Fort is done. Here, I'll show you since I know you know it. Let's take a look at the topside entrance. This one turned out freaking great as well. I love these things, man. So if you go this way, if you head off this map and head to the right, you end up running into the flooded fortress, which leads in from here, from that way, the topside entrance to here, and then from here, there we go. Yeah, there we go. If you head south from here, you end up bumping into from this angle. You end up running into the cemetery. So the three of them are in a triangle with each other. You got the cemetery at one point, you got the topside entrance north of it, and then you've got the flooded fort, this one, to like the northwest. And there's two ways. Again, I know a lot of you guys know this stuff, but for newcomers, there's here's the surface, and you have this this oil slick, poisonous water that you can. There's a hole that leads underground. There's also a ladder over here that you can crawl underneath this rubble. And oops, this guy just locked up. Before we get on with it, I'll just walk through all the scrap real quick. But so if you walk underneath this rubble, that leads down here, and then you can walk underneath, crawl underneath the rubble, get attacked by undead that are in this tunnel here. There's also this is the hole that leads in, and this putrescent water then runs downhill, and it continues to run downhill. It's 600 feet from that ladder. Here's where the water starts filling in, and you can see here it's just toe deep, and then these are 5-foot squares. So by here you're wading through at about waist height. By the time you get all the way down here to the end of the tunnel, it's a good 18 feet deep with just a little bit of gap here at the top, and then here's a murder hole trap door entrance that's currently covered with a plate, but there's just enough give that if you become a tiny size, like a mouse or an insect or something small, or gaseous form, or whatever your 8th level character is capable of pulling off, you can slip underneath that and get into the top side, into the citadel, the siege fort, to prevent people from coming down the tunnel to attack this big metal door that's been welded shut. Basically, you'll have to figure out a way to get through that, or you go through the top side. You go through the trap, the manhole, the murder hole trap door top side entrance, and there's also these gaps here, which are holes in the walls, and this leads off into the larger structure, which is the underground laboratory. This is another way that leads underwater, but as you can see, it's just a dead end. And like if you go in this way, then you just end up fighting undead and stuff in here underwater. And there's there's drowned assassins, like the CR2 undead creatures, like drowned, cursed evil people that become these things that like to grab people and drag them down and take their breath away and make them drown and become more drowned assassins along with them. And this is just getting into the dungeon. So good luck with all that crap. But having done that walk through there, the other way to get into the underground lab is to go over here to the top side entrance. This is an elevator shaft that literally just leads down into the entrance, but there's like guards and all sorts of troops and stuff that are defending this area. So you either have to talk your way through, sneak your way through, or fight your way through to be able to either go down these stairs that lead down to spirals to the passage 200 feet down, or you can just drop to the bottom of the elevator shaft, like using levitate, fly, feather fall, or just climbing down all the grit that's in the tunnel. However you want to do it, it'll eventually lead you down into the underground laboratory, and once we finish the cemetery, we will do the same color and texturizing for the underground laboratory as we have for these other maps, since we have a consistent color language that we can use now. So that's super exciting. I think that's probably enough ramble for me to actually get to work. So let's actually get to work. So when I do this, what I can do is I can, like you saw there, I've got marching ants all over the place now. So these, it froze up. I'm gonna have to not save changes. Go back over here. Occasionally Photoshop and OBS won't play nicely. The graphics card gets pissed off and it causes Photoshop to get locked up. But luckily, it doesn't prevent me from saving. Oh, this is the wrong map. Hold on. Let's get the actual map that we want. Here equals cemetery. Obviously, all these map assets will be included with the adventure if people purchase it on the DMsGuild, but you can look through the entire adventure for yourself just to see how it's structured and honestly how fun it is. So, let's see. Embankment is done for now. Let's get that guy up in there. The water is done for the moment. Embankment, dirt, water. We'll do all that oily ickiness in all this water, and like each one of these graves are unearth. So I'm gonna have to do like little water splotches in every single freaking one of these. But this is why we get paid the big bucks, because we're willing to take on the big challenges. So that's how we earn our keep. But what I was trying to say is that you can see these marching ants. It makes it easy for me to be able to select where the flagstone, where the flagstones are at, so that when we put all that crystal grit in here, we can just highlight the area and then just delete everything that's outside of it. So I don't have to be very careful about playing within the lines. Like, oops, that's the wrong color. I do got to pay attention to that though. But like, I can do things like, come on, dude. Thank you. So I can do things like this and not really have to worry about, is it staying on, like, am I staying within the lines or not? Like, I specifically really don't want to stay within the lines so that it has a more natural look to it, and I can erase some of that stuff so I can drop new pieces in. But yeah, these things fold together pretty well. It's a pretty good brush. I'm rather happy with it. It's been doing some serious work for us throughout the entire process. How am I? Oh, oops. That's a kick in the teeth. I screwed up my layers. I'm like, why do those look so faded? The answer is because I'm an idiot. There we go. That should do us well now. Yeah, there we go. Like that. I can do like this. And then I can make that a little bit smaller to fit in like that. I can make that larger. There. And I can erase it a little bit if I want to break up the texture some. Which is fun to do. It's been emotionally exhausting lately with all this OGL stuff going on. I'm actually kind of excited to see how the industry responds to WotC locking down their IP. I think that's honestly, I honestly think the whole industry has just gotten, it's been so easy. This is not surprising at all. There's a really, God, I wish I remember who I could credit it to. But there was a really great business tactician who was talking about like network strategy, like getting people to rely on the fear of missing out, everyone using the same game system because it's easy to play D&D. Like, Wizards was really smart over the past 25 years to have that OGL available for people to use their SRD, so that it'd be easy and convenient for us to be able to all use that system. And now that they've reached a level of saturation, which is just a pretty large, a pretty big market share in comparison to where Wizards was, like, say, 5 years ago, that they can now start looking at monetizing the distribution and familiarity of D&D. Now that they've successfully supplanted 4E with 5E, the analysis that I read on Reddit, I can't remember who it was, but it was brilliant. It was basically saying that this is basically what online this is what online apps do, like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, etc. They get a certain level of market share of people just utilizing the product, and once they hit basically an arbitrary critical mass, they can start converting away from incentivizing you to show up and play, and in our case that's literal, like show up and play, to monetizing those that are sticking around. And since D&D's become it already hadn't been, but now to Hasbro's satisfaction, it's such a large portion of the TTRPG audience and newcomers that they can safely move away from trying to motivate you to show up. Now it's just, you're gonna stay. So the license we're going to build is going to be more restrictive because we know most of these people are going to stay. and a lot of people just don't even know about the third party market at all. Like, it's completely irrelevant to them. I think that's the one place that, like, the one way that the DMs Guild really has an edge over like DTRPG or itch.io or just your own Patreon page, is that there's not a lot of people that invest in the third party into expansion supplements, as it were, whether it's third party or DMs Guild or wherever. So it just doesn't have nearly the same audience as people that view Wizards of the Coast content as like the One Ring, it's like the official content, and a lot of people won't touch anything other than that because honestly they just don't care. It's just not important to them. It's not part of their game routine to try to find alternate solutions because they're never pushing the limit on what 5e can do for their table. Like a good example of this is that I've been playing D&D or running D&D for about 35 years now, and it wasn't until 5e that I became interested in actually doing any kind of independent development, like creating my own classes, like the 5-color mana system, all these different subsystem tools that folks know that I built. Never had a need to do that before 5e because Wizards put out so much content for 3e, and before them TSR put out so much content for 2e and 1e and the original BECMI, Red Box, expert sets and stuff. Like, there was so much content that our tables had no way of being able to actually get through everything that had been built. So the idea of us saying, this flavor is lacking is laughable, because there was, like, in second edition there were kits, and I picked up using the term kits with the Martial Power System of basically building a customized list of powers that you want to use to express your character fantasy. But in second edition, they came up with these kits. Were kind of like a mix between feats and a very primitive form of subclass archetypes. Where, like, you could be a fighter gladiator and, like, you'd get a perk and, like, an extra proficiency. Super low fidelity, minimal rule mechanics. They were the complete books: complete fighter, complete rogue, the complete thief, the complete wizard. No, complete mage, complete priest, the archetypes, the complete warrior. That's what it was. Warrior, rogue. Yeah, it was warrior, rogue, mage, and priest were the 4 completes that they had. And each of them had like 30 kits in them. So, like, if you want to play a dancer, for instance, it'd be like the rogue or the mage book. Oh, God, they eventually came out with like complete bard. Like, they got further and further into each class, building all these little kits that gave you just like a proficiency and then like a very minimal mechanical perk. And they just dialed that up to 11 with 5e. But they invested so much more into the subclass, but reduced the amount of splat books that they were producing. That there's all these huge gaps in the power fantasies of what kind of a character do I want to play in 5e that didn't exist in previous editions of the game. So now when you're looking around, it's like, God, these options are boring to me. What else is out there? And that's where the third-party content came in, and that's where I started to, in fifth, like when Ravnica came out, I'm like, oh my God, why? I was like holding my breath, hoping that Wizards was going to, discuss color as a mechanic for casting spells, and when they avoided that, I was like, well, shit, hold my beer. And then I created the 5-color mana spell point variant rules, which again are down in the DMs Guild, link down below. Read all of them if you want. Play an entire Ravnica campaign, level 1 to 20 if you want, and see how effective they are. I'm running my second campaign now using these variant rules, and our team right now is 17th level, and it's all running smoothly, man. I mean, I will say this: third edition was great for encouraging people to explore ridiculously high-level power campaigns, like the epic level campaign, the epic level handbook coming out for third edition. Like, we took that shit seriously. Like, this is something WotC built because they want us to use it. So we started running epic level campaigns. Like, we'd start at 18th level, and into campaign at 28th level, and then we built something new, and it got psychotic after a while. Like, it's really 3E is like, once you get used to running 3E, 5E is not much of a challenge at all, honestly. So I feel pretty fortunate that I was able to cut my teeth so early in the game's life, to see how it's evolved, and to see those changes over time and what still works. But yeah, Epic Level Handbook 3rd edition, that pushed us. That really pushed us to see how good could we get at creating adventures and continuing to challenge these characters. And once we got to a point where it's like, well, we can't challenge these characters, really, like, realistically, we can't challenge them anymore. And that would come in around level 25 to 28, depending on how efficient your build was. Like, at that point, there's not a lot of growth options available. You pretty much cashed out building your own spells and creating epic gear and all the bloody blahs. Like, once the fun disappears, you just start over again, so you can just start a new type of fun. But yeah, we played epic level for probably 3 years towards the end of the 3rd edition life cycle, I want to say. And then I started doing play-by-post, and I ended up moderating at one of the RPG Crossroads. I don't remember what it used to be called, but it was one of the biggest RPG play-by-post forums. It like uses the old forum system, like Giants in the Playground and stuff like that, but it was just loaded up with just shitloads of games. So as a moderator, I'd have to comb through the games to make sure that there was nothing weird going on, and make sure everything's straight. But that also, during that time, I was also running multiple games myself, which is why they brought me in. And I was running my favorite campaign that ran for about a year and a half was a 15th level Gestalt Eberron 3rd edition campaign. At the same time, we were running a 9th level Eberron campaign and a 5th level Eberron campaign, and the 9th level characters were the henchmen and allies of the 17th level characters, and the 5th level characters were minions and allies to the 9th level characters. So when a threat would come up on the 17th level characters, they'd kick it downstream, like, we don't need to deal with this, we're going to give it to our 9th level team. And if the 9th level team would assess, this is below our pay grade, give it to the 5th level team, and the buck would stop there. The 5th level team would basically do whatever. It was the same players, but 3 different tiers of play, all running at the same time. So we'd choose which game did we want. I mean, it's play by post, so it was basically like one post every 2 or 3 days. But we would decide, which ones do we want to pace and which one we want to pay attention to now. And honestly, that was a ton of fun. Play by post is amazing. If you have the time to write like 1,500 words a day because like you're writing a novel or some stuff, play by post is incredibly easy. And now that we have virtual table, like, we didn't have virtual tabletops like this back in the year 2000. It was we were still using Excel spreadsheets to build maps and then upload them online for people to see, and then we move our characters to squares on the Excel, like we make a grid Excel spreadsheet, and then we drop our characters into those as icons, and then we would drop images as a background onto the Excel sheet, and then we would do a screenshot of the Excel sheet, upload it, and then provide let's keep that timer going, and then we would we'd have our dedicated share space with like 100 megabytes of space or something like that, and as a mod, I always had access to all the heavy gear on the website, so I could afford to load a shitload of Excel sheets to be able to show creature movement and stuff like that, and then people would download the document, they'd move their character, they'd save it, and they'd reload it to show you where their new character was. And then once Roll20 came out, that was a miracle, because it made doing that map stuff so freaking easy online. But the point was to all of that is that it wasn't until 5th edition that I felt motivated to actually create my own content, because there was so much gap, and it was like, so 5e is like the thinnest of all narrative content. Like they're leaning on you, assuming that if you care about lore, it probably means you've played before 5th edition, which probably means you have the books before 5th edition. So they kind of like did like this. They kind of like do this ongoing like insider wink wink nudge nudge sort of thing, where they're like, you know, you guys that are the most angry about this content not being around actually know what you have to be angry about, but that probably also means that you already own the books or you're willing to buy them again. So we aren't actually going to do anything to update and serve that interest in like Spelljammer, super thin mechanics. Well, it's because there's 2nd edition mechanics you could use, right? So they don't bother going into a deeper detail, and they're trying to minimize the cost of production value because they aren't looking to grow the quality of the products that they have. They only wanted to grow the number of people showing up new to the game as introductions, because if you play RPGs already, you know what D&D is. That's like a default audience that they already have, that they literally do not need to give a crap about. They need new people coming through the door. They don't need to keep the attention and appreciation of old people that have already come through the door and are not going anywhere. They'll be angry about what's being produced, but Wizards is right, we aren't leaving. So with this new 5e stuff, they can really afford to take a gamble and figure us grognards are grognards, and we're going to be angry about everything no matter what, so why even bother trying to appease us? They just need to be able to provide content, again, for new people coming through the door to impress them with ideas. Not necessarily deep substance or mechanical details, just the idea of role-playing in general and having them be able to narrate the kind of character that they want. It's all very introductory level content that they're producing, and it's not designed to have mechanical depth at all. Once you start getting on the page about that, you can be angry at WotC for making that decision, but you can't be angry at WotC for, once they made that decision, following through with it and going super thin on their content. So like, they could have made a 5-color mana spell point variant rule for use with Ravnica, Theros, and Strixhaven like I did, but it wasn't important for the narrative, so they didn't. It's only people that are obsessed with cool mechanical crunchy shit like me that would even think, what can we do with 5-color mana to make playing an MTG setting feel more like playing the card games? Like, only ultra nerds even care about that. Like, Wizards has no interest in talking to ultra nerds like that. Really, it's, you guys already know what frickin' D&D is. You're not growing our audience at all. You're already buying everything. You're already a variable that we have locked down as captured audience. We need to figure out how to make this game light, easy, friendly, and inviting enough so that people that never would have thought about playing D&D are saying like, oh yeah, that's actually pretty fun, I'm on board. That's who they need. That's exactly who they need. So it is what it is. That was a great article. God, I wish I knew what it was. If I can find it, maybe I'll post it on Twitter, because it is a good read. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how the OGL shakes out. All the stuff that I'm building for the next 2 years is all Wizards IP stuff, whether it's, this is an Eberron adventure that we're building right now, the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book that we work on in the mornings. That's Spelljammer and Light of Zaraxis, which is captured content that has to go on the DMs Guild. And then after that, when we start in on the finish the revised version of the In Command of Squads and Armies, then we'll use the Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen or whatever, that not war campaign. We'll build an actual war campaign out of that to prove that 5e can still be used for commanding armies without having to be a slow, shitty mass combat like World of Warcraft, Warhammer 40k rules, or MCDM's clunky system, or even worse, the D&D board game, the Dragonlance board game that they didn't. It took them 2 years to build that board game. What are you guys doing? Like, why don't you're a $1 billion company? Why can't you be better? It's so funny, but that's where people like me thrive, is because we know what 5e can be. We know how D20 mechanics can work, and we're stubborn enough to actually build it out. So I'm all throwing shade again. I've got my surly on because there's this huge amount of just psychic hate going towards wizards, and it's hard for me to close off my space from that background radiation. It just kind of cooks my pineal gland and makes me surly. But hey, if you like listening to the piss and vinegar, I've got plenty of it. Like and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with probably more things to make snarky comments about. But hopefully we'll be full of joy and enthusiasm for whatever the hell it is that we're doing. Oh yeah, we're doing tokens tomorrow. We're doing creature tokens tomorrow for the Booze Menagerie. We converted all the creature mechanics so that you can, have an easy way of explaining ecologies in space. Like why are there space sharks floating around when it takes, when it's 100 million miles to the next planet? What the hell are they eating? How are they staying alive? It's like, well, you got to come up with answers for that. And Wizard's solution was, if DMs give a crap, they'll come up with something. And that's like, really, you have to have rules to make rulings. That's like one of my catchphrases. You have to have rules to show how to make rulings. And when you don't have enough mechanical depth to even explain how you would create rulings, you're not providing enough. So I honestly appreciate that Wizards leans on the DMs Guild so much for creating sensible answers. As far as I know, from what OBS, from what One Bookshelf or DTRPG has said, there is no change to the DMs Guild agreement. So whatever it is that we're doing right now, it's going to remain unchanged, and we'll have Planescape available to us in 2024. So that's cool. So all I gotta do is just keep doing what I'm doing, and by the time I'm done doing it, it'll be the beginning of 2025. I can then take a look around, see what's actually going on in the OBS licensing scene, and decide if I want to stay messing around with whatever it is that Wizards has come up with next to hold my beer and let me show you how to do it better, or if I'm bored with their efforts and want to move on to what it is that I've done. Because honestly, I build a lot of subsystem mechanics for 5e on Wizard on the DMs Guild, but I can just as easily take all those mechanics and export them to whatever new SRD is out there for people to use independent of Wizards, and start running Kickstarters to build my own crap using basically the same mechanics, just worded differently. You can't copyright mechanics, you can only copyright how you explain those mechanics. And a lot of people argue that Wizards doesn't do a good job explaining their own mechanics. So not only is them screwing around with the OBS motivating people to no longer be lazily depending on Wizards, they can now say, what's a good way of actually explaining how saving throws work? Like DC might be clunky, or the weird natural language can be replaced with tag language, like Paizo does, so that you can establish at the beginning of your document, this is how a saving throw works. And so as you're going through your document, you can just simply state, creatures have to make a willpower save or be stunned until they can successfully save at the end of each round, or whatever. However it is that we would end up expressing it. That's kind of the acid test that we're going to see these third-party publishers going through here in the next few months, as they honestly attempt to find a way to stay alive with the OBS disappearing and them having to become reliant on themselves for a new SRD. So I suspect that's how it's going to shake out. We'll see. We'll see what actually ends up happening. See, I'm so ramped up emotionally about this, I'm stuttering. So don't normally stutter. Like 200 hours of content on here. It's like the first time I've freaking stuttered. Sorry, now I can't stop thinking about Tropic Thunder. What's that character's name? Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller's character. That guy's so funny. So you can see here we're adding and then we're deleting, and when I delete, I'm using the same type of brush as I have for painting with, and it leaves all these little pock marks everywhere. So I can just manipulate the size of my eraser to create different layers of crystal gunk. And then once we're done with the process, we'll be able to drop it down to 80% so it doesn't overwhelm the actual topography and line art that we've created, so it can blend in with it more naturally. So I'm going to leave it at 100% right now, just to make it easier for me to pick up on where all the grit is going. Do like little colonies like this. Anyway, that's what I've been rambling about for the past forever. If you like listening to Phil ramble, please like, subscribe, and watch many hours of his work. He has, I'm all the way up to 125 subscribers now. I'm actually really thrilled about that. I need 1,000 for YouTube to monetize me, and of those 1,000, I need 4,000 hours of watched content, and I've just pushed over 800 hours. So I'm about 10% of the way there for subscribers, and 20% of the way there for viewed hours. And I know this aren't TikTok shorts making snarky comments about how cringe the Bard is. So I know that my audience is probably artists or DMs that are interested in the creative process. I'm really kind of disappointed about this whole cratering of the OBS of the OGL, because the whole point of this stream was to show how to create PDFs for RPGs, and now we have this huge debate about, well, what can we actually do with RPGs? It's like, how relevant is this? And it'll be relevant. We just got to reestablish what SRD will be used, and the OGL that'll be attached to it. So it'll absolutely exist. It's just a matter of letting people that are far more financially motivated than I am to produce it. Because like I said, I can safely play on the DMsGuild for another 2 years, but for me to finish my current pipeline of production, because I don't care if the OBS, if the OGL or SRD changes, because I already committed myself to this path on DMsGuild for the next 2 years. So. RPG Jeffrey, hey man. Oh, hey, welcome to the mix, buddy. Proud to have you here. Yeah, Indestructible Boy's been a real, he is just a champion of the people, man. Like him or hate him, he's a straight shooter. Gotta respect. I love him. I think he's a great guy. I'd buy him a beer if he ever came to Seattle. But how you doing, man? This is the Eberron adventure, a map that I produce. I do the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration thing on Monday mornings. I do martial, or basically every morning. Maps, token production, game mechanics for ship combat. And then Mondays at lunch, my lunch stream once a week is the martial power system, which is almost complete. We're just doing sample builds now. And so we'll do a couple more sample character builds, and then we'll start building sample monsters using martial powers. And then I will alternate. If I'm not doing Spelljammer stuff in the morning, I'll do the Eberron Adventures, an 8th level adventure in Karnath for people fighting undead. And so this is just a bunch of grit on the wrong color. So I always got something new and different going on, and as one project gets completed, we publish it, then we open up that workspace and we pull something else forward on our workbench and we start that new one. We just keep cycling through stuff, and I have editors working on both the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration as well as the Eberron manuscript right now, and it's kind of a race to see which editor finishes first, because whoever hands me a completed manuscript, I will then pause and then open up the layout program and start dumping the text into pages. And once all the text sits on the pages properly, then I can export the pages as PDFs here into Photoshop, and I can just paint directly on them to be able to produce the interior art that sits on the pages, like the page dressing for the trim and all that stuff. It's like the whole process can be done in a layout program and in Photoshop. And I just use Microsoft Word. It's free, and I already know how to use it, and it's with different objects that, like, you can create objects and then put text inside the objects. It makes it very manual. You can control things with a really high degree of precision. Like, you can put things exactly where you want them to be. You can resize things. You can customize the background art on each page very easily. I know that InDesign is built to do that stuff, but it's so much more of a workhorse than I really want to invest in. Oh, I accidentally made a hole there. So let me go ahead and fill all that garbage in. There we go. So do me a favor, like and subscribe. I do this literally every day but Sunday. So it's I have a day job, but I aspire to retire and make this this is technically my retirement plan. So I just need more people subscribed and checking out my content and throwing me shade when I deserve it, razzing me when I need it, and give me feedback when I ask for it. So stick around, man. It's I'm happy to have you here. But oh shit, more text. I'm on lunch break and at work. Math works dope. Thanks, man. You do night shift stuff, or are you on the other side of the globe from America? Because it's getting pretty late here in the USA. And I hear people on lunch break. It makes me think that you are in India or Europe. Turner has inspired me to get into game design. Excellent. And third-party content. Great. I'm already old hand with CSP and Corel. Nice. And you got Affinity Publisher. Excellent. And yeah, Australia. Badass, man. King Carcass is my editor for the Mana stuff that I do. Like the Martial Powers book that I'm putting out. He's in Queensland? I think that's the name of some place in Australia. Anyway, he's a really cool guy. He does a lot of really smart mechanical work. You can CARCAS Ken, K-E-N, King Carcass. He has a lot of stuff both on DMsGuild as well as just independently. He doesn't stay just inside the 5e space, but when he does, he puts out cool ideas, man. So we're terrified of the Southern Hemisphere. It seems to be more pleasant weather, but more deadly creatures. So north side, less deadly creatures, but the weather seems rougher. So, I mean, 6 or a half dozen, something's going to kill you, I guess, eventually. It's just a matter of, are you comfortable with what your fate is, right? So, anyway, I'm stupid. Jeffrey, man, what are you getting into? What's so you said you've gotten into design. You caught the bug. What was the first thing that inspired you to pick up the pen and start crafting something? And kudos for being an artist on top of it, man. You're doing it right. You're more than welcome to stick around here and talk shop with me about texturing and coloring and all that kind of crap. And I don't see any color. So if you happen to be around and start asking color questions like, does this look right and crap like that, I certainly appreciate an honest opinion. And the more honest, the better. Like, if something doesn't look right, you gotta let me know. Because that's sometimes people are too nice to me, and that doesn't help me be able to build the best product that I can. Yeah. So be welcome to, especially if I'm asking questions about like how does something look. I legitimately need honest feedback. Like if that color, like I'm good with contrast because it's all. When you're 100% colorblind, all you have is contrast, gray tone contrast, and but I can get lost in like does the color I picked for the contrast still like make sense? Like thematically, does things make sense? And so far, I know that the color palette that I'm using for this project, for the most part, everyone's pretty much checked off as looking good. So I feel confident in that sense. But new things are going to arise, especially once we get underground and once we go to the village. There's going to be a lot more wood and stone stuff. Like here in the manifest zone, anything made out of plants is kind of rotting away and dying. So there's a pretty limited color palette on what I actually need inside of the Mabar manifest zone. But once you get outside of it in Act 1, back where the real world is still in existence, things look like they're supposed to. And I can color reference a bunch of buildings and stuff, but something might crop up on occasion that can throw me for a loop. And the faster I can identify something's off, the better. And over the years, I've gotten pretty good at being able to pick out if I'm doing, like my RGB bar over here, the color tools. Honestly, Photoshop has the best color slider tools I've found out of any of the programs I've ever used. So I just kind of stuck with Photoshop because their color tools are easy for me to grok. But you know, we keep with what we keep what we're familiar with. But I had an idea for a system and kept putting it off. I think design stream lit on fire. Excellent, man. Looking forward to finding out more about it. I can appreciate if you're hush-hushy about the details right now. Sometimes you got to hold things close to your chest until you know it works. I'm lucky to have a weekly team at my home table that lets me experiment with different ideas and mechanics a lot. They just like that I run level 1 to 20 campaigns. You know, not a lot of tables actually run full campaigns, and that's kind of you know why people tolerate me. You might have questions about like how much combat versus exploration versus social encounters there may be, but at least I'll let you play them from level 1 to 20. So, but I was talking about that earlier. Spending years playing 3rd edition at the epic level goes a long way to getting you comfortable with pretty much anything that 5e can throw at you. Like 5e is like easy mode compared to a 27th level Gestalt 3rd edition campaign where you have 4 times the amount of spell slots to throw around, and the only way you can kill somebody is, you know, if you can do like 20 points of constitution damage in one hit. It's ridiculous. It's just freaking ridiculous. So in comparison to that, 5e is pretty damn easy mode. So it's I definitely recommend people try other systems just so they can get a sense of how other like workflows work. Like just like conducting a round or a turn of sequences. Like in 1st edition D&D, each turn was 10 minutes, so you could basically do something during that turn. Excuse me. And then combat was like you get 1 attack or you can cast 1 spell. That's basically it. Like super fast, and it was very minimal. It was only once we really started getting the dungeon punk with 3E that they started really diving into the nitty gritty of what's an individual character capable of doing. And once they got onto that path, they had to keep pushing the limit on how much characters can do on a round-to-round basis. Because the character became the fantasy, not the world. Like in older editions, it was, I'm in this world, let's find out something about it, let's explore it, and see what we can discover that we can use to achieve our goals or become more powerful characters or whatever. And that got stripped out in 3, 4, and now 5th edition. Like those are not priorities anymore, which is a large theme of the work that I do, of filling those, of reintroducing those old mechanics, that old mentality, that 1st edition mentality of world building back into 5e, because 5e doesn't teach about campaigns. It teaches about character options, and then provides you a pretty much paint by the numbers adventure story. That's not really a campaign; it's just a story that your characters are basically pseudo participants in. I think a good example is like those what was it? House of the Dead, like the video games with the gun on the cord. Like you click at it and you fire things, and you have to like go off, like point off screen, and then click to reload, and then you go back on and you like the camera is constantly moving you down a pipeline, and it's up to you to clear the obstacles fast enough to keep the conveyor belt moving without dying. 5th edition is exactly like that. It's like 4th edition was an MMO or like an action RPG, and 5th edition is God, what are those games? What is that genre of game? Gun or shit. I don't know what that genre of video game is, but you know what I'm talking about? Like you've got the gun and you just shoot shit, and you're just on a conveyor belt that just leads you to more and more targets. You just got to hit all the targets while the conveyor belt moves, and like it'll stop, and the conveyor belt won't move forward until you clear all the obstacles. And then it pans and like down a hallway, and you shoot at stuff until you get to another room, and then the camera stops and you clear obstacles until they're clear, and then the camera moves again into another area. That's exactly how 5e works. It's the exact same action loop, the same game system. That you're just leading characters from one event to the next, and the only real decision they make is which resources do they want to spend to kill the enemies that are in the way at the time. So it's very pointy, clicky style of DMing. Like it like their solution to DMing in 5th edition isn't let's teach you how to be a DM and teach you how to be an improvisation actor, which is honestly what DMing, a good DMing is. It's you're an improvisation actor. Like an improv comedy team, like whose line is it anyways? Kind of like that. But that's really difficult to teach. And 1st edition, 2nd edition had a procedural generation where each turn, the DM had a sequence of things they had to do. They had to check for random encounters. Once they determine if there's a random encounter or not, they determine what that random encounter is, how far away that random encounter is from the characters, plot out what the room is, and then ask the characters what do they want to do with their next turn. That turn would last 10 minutes. After every 5 turns, they would take a 10-minute break, a short rest. So 50 minutes of adventuring, 10-minute break. 50 minutes of adventuring, 10-minute break. And you had that same sequence that you would go through of updating the life of the dungeon to respond to the character's presence. And then whatever decisions it is that the characters were making, the DM would just call balls and strikes, depending on what it was they were trying to manipulate. I have to go back to work. All right, man. Thanks for the sub. I really appreciate it. And can you catch the rest of this on DOD and checking out the rest of your channel? Well, there's a shitload of content, my man. So you have a safe night. And Jeffrey, man, thanks a lot for showing up at all. It's give me a holler on Indestructible Boy's channel. Just shout out at me, man, because I mod there. That's where I go to sharpen my knives. So. I'm sure I'll see you there. But yeah, be safe, dude, and I'll see you on the other side. But yeah, I complain about I complain about 5e a lot on this stream, but only because all the things that I build here are an effort to try to teach the new generation about how they can look at like how can they make the world bigger. And by bigger, I mean like how can you reintroduce the idea that your characters aren't important. It's what those characters discover about the world that the players can incorporate into their characters that's important. Like 1st edition was really interesting because it only took a few minutes for you to make a new character regardless of the level. And so it was like an escape room, where if you're wrong about the puzzle, your character dies. And so they had all these followers like shield bearers or treasure carriers or torch bearers, animal handlers, people that just like Monty Python and Search for the Holy Grail, they had like that huge troupe of all these like monks and knights and foot soldiers that were running around with King Arthur once he built up enough momentum and followers. They just had this huge train of fighters and adventurers following them around like with the holy hand grenade and stuff. Like they had relics. Like they acquired all these like one-shot magic items to deal with threats. Like that's very, very first edition. Like that Monty Python, so Search for the Holy Grail, is so freaking classic to the dorks that love that stuff because they were all playing first edition D&D. I'm like, everything about Monty Python and Search for the Holy Grail is very much just like it's just a D&D campaign with like shenanigans turned up to 80%. A little bit of social and a little bit of combat and a little bit of exploration squeezed in. Like 6, 7, 7 in that order, you know? And then it's just shits and giggles and running around. But in first edition, when your character dies, you would just make a new character and say that he was one of the, you know, one of the characters that were running around your caravan. Is like he was holding your shield, but now that his liege is dead, he picks up his sword. He already has the shield, and then he continues on. Like you didn't care if your character died. You wanted to get to the bottom of that pit and find out what was in there, because whoever's left in your retinue that survived would exhume those things, bring them to the surface, and then whoever could get high enough level to start building a fortress and gather followers, you could put all those resources into that facility so that you start stockpiling stuff. So when you get to higher levels, you can start pulling that stuff out to deal with threats, whether they're showing up in your kingdom or you're recruited to go deal with a threat in another kingdom, like at the companion, like 12th to 16th level of play. Very, very different game, and that philosophy, that meta game mentality of like, why are we doing this, and like why, like de-emphasizing the value of your character. That was a huge 1E thing, and with the expansion of Dungeon Punk in 3E, like the more you fall in love with your character and the more you want to kit out your character, the more WotC can now sell you stuff. Like Hero Forge needs to watch their ass, because I think Wizards is going to come and eat their lunch, because they're going to have their Unreal Engine. You'll be able to build a character icon inside of it in 3 dimensions. It'd be really easy to export that as STL and sell it to you, or better, print the mini and send that mini to you. Like subcontract a 3D printer shop to do that. I think that's where Wizards is going to go, or at least they're thinking about it, I'm sure. Because that is a very strong aftermarket. You build a character, what do you need next? You need a figurine. You need a miniature for that character. And they may be able to pull microtransactions out of people to build those minis in the Unreal Engine dungeon space, but the best way would be to actually physically mail you that character. That is the best way for them to be able to, at least I would say the most efficient way, for them to start monetizing players who generally don't buy anything. Like that is a surefire way to be able to get somebody to spend maybe $1 or $2, you know, or $5 or whatever they determine people are willing to spend for minis. I just take MTG art and drop it into my virtual tabletop on Roll20. It's like, I don't care. But people geek out on that crap. People really like having a mini of their favorite character, and like my characters always die in first edition campaigns, so I never really have an opportunity to really fall in love with a character. It's like, oh, I want a mini for this guy. I'd actually be scared that he would die if I did. So I'm not their market, but I'm a DM and I buy all their books. I mean, so they already have me. But that is an easy way for Wizards to monetize that aftermarket they're talking about that everyone's so concerned about. But you got to think about how many people are already making minis on Hero Forge and asking them to send a copy of it to them. Like, you know, it's technically things that you're already spending money on. They'll just be able to provide a more customized thing to spend that money on, and even better if you're emotionally connected because it's your special character. But again, 1E didn't have special characters. They just had guys that hadn't died yet. So anyway, very, very different. And I'm spending a lot of time trying to... I feel like I'm doing something wrong with this stuff. Like I could be doing this better. I had such a good thing going on the other maps, and I think I took too long to float around. So I'm just going to start stabbing at this a little bit and see if the muse will wake up and remind me how I'm supposed to do these things, because I know she knows. She taught me how. I just need to get her back in charge. I was hoping if I'd ramble long enough, she'd just take the wheel and start doing stuff, but she apparently wants me to appreciate her more than I have, so I am humbly submitting to her intuitive power. Let's see what she helps me create as a result. Of my pleads. Who knows? Maybe she's just fickle today. Could be. Fun stuff though, man. I love doing this. Cartography is so cool. I never knew I'd love making maps so much. So it's been a joy to realize how freaking cool this stuff is to do. I've only made a few professional maps in my days. It was mostly character art and environmental stuff that I do. I'll try something like that. That's starting to look better. How are we doing on time? 8:15. Still got an hour tonight. I mean, I do a lot of work off screen as well. Like, I don't need to do all of this on screen with you guys. I can come back and get a good chunk of this stuff taken care of, and then we just keep on keeping on. But I'd like to have at least a piece of each step in the process here on stream, so you guys can see, like, where am I going and how did I get there. And where we're at right now is basically me getting to a point where I'm wanting to punch the screen because I'm having a difficult time remembering the specific workflow, what was I specifically doing to get the kind of texture patterning that I have on the other maps so far to be able to duplicate this effect. I'm not a true master. Like I said, my muse does a lot of work through me, and I don't really know necessarily how she makes the things do. So when I actually have to go back and think about what I'm doing, and I'm pretty much having to think about what I'm doing right now, and that really limits the flow of getting back into the same style that I had when I was intuitively drifting. Which I'd say is the most complicated part of autonomic art, that when you're letting your reflexes basically make the decisions on where something's going to go, you kind of have to be in that same workflow space to be able to duplicate the same results again. And I've been consistently able to do so on the other two maps, and this one's just giving me a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm just going to tap at this a bit and then try. Thank you, timer. I'm against a wall here, so I know I can bulk up. There we go. Now I'm starting to find it again. Thank you, Muse. Starting to get back into that drift. Feeling good about... Starting to feel good about crystal placements. Get that clump going. One of the secrets is buildings. Cramming a bunch of crystals along the walls of areas. All these crystals, like if you gather up a 5-foot area of this and mix it in with a couple of hit points worth of blood, you can make a crystal resin that can be used as a material component for darkness and necromancy spells, as well as rituals. Like you can use this grit to create an ink, a paint that you can create magic circles and ritual emblems with for you to be able to cast, again, as rituals, different. You know, like speak with dead and create like animate object, or animate dead and what is it? Toll of the Dead and Chill Touch, all that crap. Like you can use the substance to empower those spells, so they're valuable. So they've got henchmen that are running around from place to place, basically collecting bags of this stuff to take back to a chemist in the underground fortress for them to brew up another batch of this stuff and then prep it for exporting out to their patrons, whoever they may be, like the 12 or whatever your plot hook is, Hater Academy or wherever it is that you're sending these things to. And your character can either stick their nose in the middle of it and disrupt it, or they could potentially even take control of the operation and make this place their fortress for themselves, clean it up a little bit, take control of the demons and the undead that are spouting out of the place, calm it down a little bit so it gets off the radar and of authorities, so they don't come poking around and worrying what's going on. You definitely don't want to have any undead killing a bunch of people. That's the problem that they're having right now, is they don't have control over the undead that are spawning from the place. It's much more aggressive than they expected. So they don't have the resources, the manpower to be able to really contain it. So they're hoping that they can secure this place and get additional support before authorities come in and start stomping on everything. If they can get a political force in place that's going to drive the sheriff away from the area, or disengage Ader Academy from taking interest, then they should be able to get an operation up and running where they can start producing magical substance that is highly profitable for the foreseeable future. But if your meddling kids coming in here with their stupid lichen, they're going to have you can disrupt the whole scene and earn a couple great powerful enemies for your characters for the rest of the... This is an 8th level adventure. Like, you can start at 7th, but it should end by the time your characters hit... Like, this should get your characters to 9th level. Like, however you're pacing this thing out, they should get to 9th level so they can continue on with bigger and badder adventures after this. Using basically this as a launch pad into bigger and badder organizations that, that your DM can weave into their campaign. Or if you're just doing a one-shot, then there you go. I've talked about this being a one-shot, like even like a competitive scorekeeping sort of thing for tournaments, or for professional DMs that want content they can use over and over again, because there's so many different plot hooks that can lead characters in with different objectives and different resources available to them, that a DM can run the adventure in all sorts of different ways. And not run it the same way twice, or dozens of different takes. And of course, every time you run it, you become more intimately familiar with it, and you put more and more of your own personal flavor bend onto it. So it becomes something you're even better at using, and it becomes hopefully over time it becomes your favorite campaign. Like this is my favorite one shot to put characters through. Or if I'm doing a paid gig with like 3 sessions only, then I know I can start them at this point in the adventure, and we'll be able to kick through it, and that'll be fun. So that kind of stuff geeks me out, like being able to build tools like that for people. Because I used to really love the tournament modules in first edition, where you get X amount of points for clearing a room, or X amount of points for however much treasure, or killing creatures. Like you had those 3 paths of acquiring a top score in a tournament against other teams that were going through the same dungeon at the same time, trying to outscore you by either going further, killing more things, or finding more loot than you did. So super cool concept. I can't believe they actually did that back in the day. I wish I never had an opportunity to go to one of these tournaments, but I understand they're pretty freaking cool. I'd love to see that. Like the Adventure League is like a parody of that, you know? I've talked about that on a recent stream, I think, about how the Adventure League is designed to be reliable, that the story is the same, and that you're at the same pace, and you're at the same, like at the end of the 5th adventure, you're at this location. And so anyone that's playing Adventure League, if they've gone through the first 4 adventures, they should be at this location, and they're just picking up where they left off, even if they're in Philadelphia this week and they were in Soho last week or whatever. So like that's what it's designed to do, to be able to provide a consistent experience that you can move through wherever, whenever you are, which is why I keep thinking that they're trying to turn this Unreal thing that they're doing into Gloomhaven, where they can load in an AI with a pre-scripted adventure, and with the style of 5e being what it is, it's kind of designed to stay on script with that. So the only real choices you're going to have in that Unreal adventure is what character are you going to be as you go through it, because all the beats will be the same. Your character truly doesn't matter in any of these 5e adventures. They really emphasize you can be any character you want, because it doesn't matter what character you are. You can be a gumball. You can be a sentient gumball next to a cat with wings, next to a veteran fighter with a miniaturized hamster on his shoulder. Like it literally does not matter what your characters are, because you're just going down that tunnel and you're just shooting all the things, and depending on what kind of character it is, that's going to change the color of the bullets that you fire. But that's about it. So I think they call them false choices, or also known as railroading. But the adventures are loose enough that DMs that are used to homebrewing, creating their own content, can take the nuggets that are like the written adventures are full of cool ideas if you know how to execute them. And that's the intimidating part, which is why there's so many D&D channels about DMing and stuff, because that converting things from an idea into a functioning page of something you can lead somebody through, that is a difficult task if you aren't used to it, and with no rules about how to procedurally move through that. Like what does a DM need to do this turn for you to be able to move on to the next turn, to be able to keep the ball rolling? There are no rules anymore about what does a DM do next? What does a DM do next? They call it D&D next, but there was nothing next. It's so ironic. And here I'm hard ranting about my favorite role-playing game again. I get angry because I'm so passionate about it. I don't even think most of the designers at this point were around in first edition. So there's this weird distorted echo chamber happening where we move further and further away from how to empower characters. And if you don't know how to empower characters, you have to disempower them to stay in control. And players want to make a difference. Like, at least all the players that stick at my table are the type of people that want to make more of a difference in their life than they do. So they play an RPG because it's the fastest way for them to pretend that they themselves have power in a fantasy world where they can pretend things matter for a little while. And so they can make serious decisions that weigh on them. Is this something I really want to do? Is this the kind of person I want to be in a high-stress situation? So it's pretty cool. It's pretty freaking cool. I love that stuff, man. But that legacy is... It is literally an oral tradition. You have to pass that stuff down by explaining it and walking through and looking at things with people. And there's a lot of D&D channels that approach that idea, but content's getting more and more scarce to point towards. To say, here's a good example of that crap. Unless you're in the OSR game space, which is its own. That's not 5e. Most people want to play 5e because it's the most popular role-playing game in the world. It's Wizards, like we were talking about earlier, Wizards did a great job in getting that mass distribution, so it's just the default game, whether you like it or not. It's just what people play. So that means that there's a loss of skill, because if you aren't being forced to prove yourself, then you kind of just get to kick back on whatever it is that you put out, because it's what people will accept. So, like I said before, I create these things to help lead back to that path of empowerment for DMs and then for their players. If the DM feels empowered to be able to make the decisions that they want and to be able to steer the game in the direction that they choose, then they'll feel confident in where the adventure is at, so they won't care what the players do. If your players having wish is only intimidating if they say, I wish for X, and you don't know why. That's the only time that's intimidating. If you get good enough at improvising, you're going to do X, well, that'll probably cause Y, Z, A, B, and C. Okay, here's D. I'm going to show you D. And the adventurer is realizing what happened at Z, A, B, and C. It looped around on you and you didn't realize it. You're fighting a new foe now and you're going to have to figure him out. But you won't know that until you pick up on the narrative clues that I'm seeding for you. This is all advanced DM tactical shit. And unless you know how to spell it out, you're not real. You're kind of like the analogy I like to use was when I took geometry in high school, right? Stupid little math kid. Not really. I was horrible at math. But I took geometry and I would look at how the angles and stuff were working, and I would just be able to look at it and I would know, just because I could see it, what the angle was supposed to be or what the distance was supposed to be. I'm good with spatial stuff, which is kind of like math, but I'm good with space. I'm good with space, like Doom maps and like GoldenEye and stuff. I can map out a place in my mind pretty easily once I navigate through it. That's kind of a guy thing. A lot of guys can do that really easily, so it's not kind of special. It's just I'm a guy. So when I look at geometry, I would just kind of know the angle or know the distance. But the point of the class was to be able to explain the logic of the math that went into it, right? But I can never explain the logic of the math. This D&D is something that I understand intuitively how the things move, but I can also explain it. So I feel very proud in the D&D space because I have both the intuitive, just the intuition to do it well, but also I can mechanically explain all of it. It's within my capacity to logic through. And hopefully these streams are a fair enough example of me being able to demonstrate that through conversation and mad rambles of a deranged king to be able to explain how this game system used to work. Because that's kind of the goal. So people keep showing up and talking to me, so I guess I could put 2 and 2 together to at least get 4. Anyway, we'll see. But yeah, it looks like the muse is picking up inside of me, and she's doing some good work. So we're just going to keep picking at stuff, picking away at the things, letting some areas get less clumpy, and allowing other places to get super steeped. So I'm going to clear this off a bit. Just clear that out just a smidge. So it just feels a little bit too dense. I like this density around the buildings. I want to keep that. I just want to thin these out a little bit over here. That feels pretty natural for me to be able to do that. Make bigger crystals and thin those out. Just get that grit on the ground, you know? Gotta make it gritty. That's right. The larger the area, the The more I want the area to be clear of debris, the larger the brush and eraser I want to use, so it has that more granular grittiness going on there. And then I can drop back down into a smaller brush to have a higher density of grittiness in the area. That is something that I now remember. So this should be a lot easier for me to start processing. No! Smalls. Thank you. It's fun dropping the same shape into the same size, but having just a little bit of gap around it. So it looks like it's been harvested and then regrew from the cleared out harvest. So subtle. But like if 1 out of 100 people catch on that, I'll feel really, really proud as a cartographer. Like I don't have to spell out. I'm trying to drop like all these little quality of life things in here that like if you really look at it, it's like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Like when you get into the adventure, right? You've got this area here, and this is the direction it's assumed that you're coming from towards the village. These walls are knocked outward, right? And there's 2 instances of them being knocked outward. So when your characters show up here, there's gonna be footprints and stuff leading out of these broken this broken wall space, heading in the direction of the village that you're coming from. But there's also another one over here. And there's also an open front door here. Like if you come over this way, there's a high chance you're gonna run into Cartography guards. As opposed to if you come over here, you run into more undead and stuff. This just leads off into the forest. Outside of the manifest zone where the trees haven't rotten away yet. It's just an undead pack heading that way. Undead packs heading this way. Less undead heading this way, but there's more fortress and control over here. So the guards are keeping that area locked down, but they have to keep coming back here to the cemetery to make sure there's no new weirdness going on. At this point, most of the graves are open. So they don't pay as much attention to the place unless they need an easy source of crystals. Like if management, the Emerald Claw downstairs management starts getting cranky about not having enough resources available for them to do the rituals that they're doing, then it's real easy to come over here into the cemetery to come fetch some more crystals, assuming that they can stay safe. Because there's all these unmarked graves in the region as well, of experiments and stuff that went wrong that lead to all sorts of bodaks and shades running around that are pissed off at the shit that happened to them back in the day. And now that the manifest zone has risen, they have the power to rise up and take vengeance upon the flesh. And so that's the kind of crap that you're having to deal with. So there's a lot of just freaking evil monsters running around this place. And the guards are like, we aren't getting enough hazard pay for this kind of crap. And every time a guy disappears, it's like, that's a significant hit to our morale, boss. We're going to need some sort of motivation. And then after a certain point, they're like, oh, you're adventurers here? You're here to break this place up? Great, let me just get out of your way. You're going to go kill those guys? Awesome. Let me open the door for you. I will see you later. Allow me to maintain plausible deniability in case you fail, but I won't get in your way. Like, that's a conversation you can have. That's the guards get to that point at, that's where the guards end up at some point. If you go running around in here long enough. If it's a shorter kit campaign, they could already be at that breaking point. It just depends on how many sessions you plan on actually running this. Like if it's part of a larger campaign, or if it really is just a one-shot. You're going to be able to approach the content a little bit differently. What you want to prioritize in your story. And it's 8:30, so we still have a solid hour. I'm happy about that. Just a little bit. There's so much flack and dirt on the ground at this point that I just got to make sure I don't have any weird patterning going on to make it look like I just got to keep it fresh, Just keep it fresh. Moment of silence. Cheers. Let's keep at it. Much grit as I want. The grittier, the better. I gotta keep breaking these things up, otherwise, you know, when you zoom in on it, it's too patternous. I need to make sure that we're breaking it down so it's less of a brush stroke and it's just more of a clump or a form that the characters are just witnessing, you know? So I'm being fed an old memory from about 20, I want to say 22 some odd years ago. Disturbing shit. Something that had to get shook free, apparently. Sometimes those things just land, you know, things you haven't thought about forever. And they just pop into your mind. You're like, God, where did that come from? But more importantly, what is it trying to say? Save button before something weird happens. I feel something weird is going to happen. I don't know what it is, but there's weirdness in the sky. I can feel her. Just like that, okay. Man, it is really raining tonight in Seattle. I love that about this town. I spent a good decade in Tempe, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. And it was just south of Phoenix. That's where ASU is at. You know, if you know the territory. If you know the territory, you already know that, and I don't need to tell you nothing. But it's east of the Grand Canyon. And it rarely rains there. There's a monsoon season that basically just like pours mud on you for a couple of days, and then that's it. We had a hailstorm in July one year. It was 106 degrees on the concrete, and a freak hailstorm came down off of the mountains in Colorado. It hailed for about 3 minutes, and everything was just covered in little, hailstones, like pellets of ice. And they were just dancing. They were bouncing and dancing on the concrete because it was so hot that the steam would make them pop. So for a few minutes it went brump, and then it was until it all melted into a puddle, and then it evaporated and was gone. No evidence. It's like, God, that was a thing. That was cool. That was goofballs, man. I'd never seen that again, but that was really cool. You know what I think I'm going to do is just flesh out. This is an obstacle. You can't move through those walls. But like you could climb up on the sarcophagus, for instance. But it's inside of this space. So I need to make a lid, like a roof for this eventually. So because it's not just open space. This isn't open space. These shrines aren't open space. There, it's locked up. So you can see I can still save it even though it's locked up. There we go. I just have to relaunch it. Yeah, so we can just do like that. We're just gonna do a perimeter thing going on here. We'll go back through. My gal left a jug of Sierra Mist here. I'm like, boo, that stuff's gonna go flat. She's like, go ahead and drink it, and so I did. And I don't drink a lot of soda, so I'm all burpy and stuff. Makes me feel goofy. Like that. Yee! I love how this stuff fits. It's such a great tool. Well, all that shit just fits together. Customized brushes, man, they are amazing, but if you don't know how or why you're using them, they're worthless. You really got to build up your skill base so that you can, so that you have just so you know why you're doing what you're doing, you know. I'm told there's some sort of weird obsession among newer artists that are using digital tools. They want to use all these different brushes for them to be able to, they think it's going to make them a good artist having brushes. It's like, no, you build those brushes to speed up your own personal workflow. And if your workflow is similar to what another artist's is, you can potentially use the brushes that they've been creating to help speed up your workflow the same as theirs is. But until you know how to why they're using those brushes the way that they are, they're not very useful to you. Having said that, I may eventually sell my brushes. I don't know. I'm not big into marketing and products and stuff. The only reason I publish PDFs is it's because that's what you do. You know, I can just post art, but you gotta make a PDF and like build the thing and actually post it someplace. Otherwise, you're just making top 10 lists of neat ideas to put in a D&D campaign. Don't ask me how to make them work. Type of YouTube content garbage. Anyway, not hating on anybody. I don't think I even know anyone that does stuff like that. I think all the YouTube streamers I know of that I listen to, I think almost all of them actually implement the stuff that they talk about. I won't name any names, but I've seen various content creators produce they get up to X thousand number of followers, and then they start running Kickstarters to make money off of their crowd. Same thing that Wizards is doing, kind of. But they produce these things, and you can tell that they're not play tested. Like, there's flaws in them. Like, if you really get into the nitty gritty of how these work and you think it through and actually try it at a table, you're going to find this particular mechanic doesn't work. For instance, like a good case. I think I've used this reference before. A good example is when we were building the Spelljammer combat and exploration mechanics. It seemed intuitive to us that you'd be able to use an action to, while piloting a ship, to make that ship dodge, so that all incoming attacks against the ship and the weapon crews or anybody on the that's exposed on the top deck could be that were targeted by attacks would also. Those attacks would be at disadvantage. Like, if the ship is at disadvantage to hit, surely the people that are on the ship, they will also be disadvantaged to hit. And it just caused... It became so difficult to hit people because you're always at disadvantage. You have to be, like, 8th level for you to be able to hit shit consistently. It's like, most campaigns are over at that point. That is too difficult. So we had to take dodge as a general action off the table. We had to replace it with, like, defense, which was, like, a advantage on grappling checks, and dexterity checks to prevent your ship from getting scuttled. It's like smaller detail points like that. It's like you had a defensive action you could take without it having to be dodge, because dodge was just too strong. It was basically like the rogue takes dodge, and now everyone on his team benefits from it. That's basically what it did. That is busted. Does not work. So we had to do away with that. But you don't know on paper if you're duplicating the 5e combat system at the ship scale. You would think that dodge action just makes sense. It's such an integral part of just general 5e combat. But the thing is that in 5e combat, you rarely want to take the time and effort to invest in dodge unless you really don't have anything better to do. Like, my action economy is too important for me to invest in dodge. But with team tactics, with ship rules on a Spelljammer vessel, there is a lot of leftover action economy that characters can use each round. That it's easy to just squeeze in a dodge action, depending on what kind of character you're playing and what roles they're playing. The pilot can easily get that investment, and it's like it's easy mode. Then it's too difficult to be hit by NPCs. So Mojo Jojo could not keep it. I like that example a lot. It's really fun. Like, you have to playtest your shit. You have to know it worked. I had to completely rewrite the 5-color mana spell point variant rules, because when my editor got a hold of it, he's like, I have no idea what you are doing here, dude. What are you trying to do? And I'm like, X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, then you need A, B, and C. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. And he's like, yeah, get out of here. Which is another reason why you really want to invest in an editor. Because if you get a good editor, they're going to be a really strong head check on, does this shit work or not? And that experience is what really sold me on, boy, I really need to playtest freaking everything I do. So when I rebuilt the book, I got a team together, started using it regularly, and we found that, yeah, this stuff clicks. It's pretty intuitive. It's neat. Then we knew we can go. It derailed me for 6 months. I ended up having it was like a 17-month production time to get that color mana book out, the first one. Oh, it was a monster. But that was my fault for not playtesting at first to realize where the mistakes were. And I was just lucky enough to have Hidden Dave, who is an excellent editor, to be working with me, and for him to say, look, this I don't think this works the way that you intend it to. And I had to go back and check it, and God damn it, you're right, it didn't. So that was, again, valuable lesson. Holy crap, Flutes! What up, my dude? Oh, right on, man. I'm happy to have you here. Hopefully the crap I'm rambling about makes sense. I honestly don't remember what I was talking about. My muse is running inside me, so she just lets me ramble and presses the buttons for me, and I just get to kind of watch. Like, half the time my hand is moving, I'm tapping on stuff, I have no idea where it's going to land. Like, I have a general idea that I need to move around these buildings, but stay outside of them for now. So that's kind of what's been happening, but it's been mostly on autopilot. And I find the more I ramble, the more I can like turn off my brain to just let it start spouting words. And that's when weird shit starts to come out. Like if my muse is really just jamming, that is I'll be constantly just thrilled with what I get to see on the screen. But the kind of crap that she says, it's some of it can be like real outer limits, like pretty fringe, crazy theory stuff, and which I just learned to let her say what she wants to say, because she's the one that's pressing the buttons. It's kind of neat, but it took a long time for me to get my art to a point where I could just literally turn off my brain like that, and that's when I started to realize that there is an actual sort of magic that goes on in artwork when your brain turns off, but you keep going. It's almost a form of unlife, It's goofy. It's really, really goofy. I've tried turning off my brain when I've done improv on stage and some weird happens. I knew you're an improv guy. I get that sense about you, my man. Like good role playing, it's all freaking improv. It's just running in the moment and just whatever. Like my D&D prep sessions, I like. God, when was the last time I'm running a 17th level campaign right now, and I think the last time I prepped was I think I prepped an encounter 2 or 3 weeks ago. We play every week. I think I prepped an encounter a few weeks ago, but I've been running on improvisation for about a month and a half now, and we're getting to the point this Wednesday. They're going to move into a new territory they've never had access before, and I legitimately never fleshed it out properly. I have a general idea what they're going to get there. And I know there's a stack of stuff that kind of originates from where they're getting into, but I really don't know the sequence of events at all. And I'm a little intimidated about that, because I know I have not invested the amount of time to grok shit. Like when I prep an adventure, there might need to be a map, but like I do not do this. This is not a D&D map for me. Like my whole, and I've talked about this, my whole philosophy about gaming is that if you're playing an open campaign where it's like sandbox and stuff, you want to put as little effort into cartography as possible. The less, the better. Like always just draw it on the spot. You'll need to know what's there. Like your prep should be having an idea of what's in the environment that you're going to draw, but you really shouldn't have it planned out ahead of time. If it's sandbox, you should let it just spontaneously show up and just be there so that the players will never know what is prepped and what's improvised. If it all looks like hot garbage, like stick figures and sloppy walls, and your wall is like this, and then you're like there's a door here, like that's. Like, did you just make up that wall? It's like you'll never know if I did or not. That's the whole point. Like, the less they understand what you're doing, the more they're willing to believe whatever it is that they're projecting into the game environment as this belongs here. And a good DM can pick up on those signals of what's exciting them, so you can just start naturally filling all that gap space with their assumptions, basically. That's just good improv, going off of what's being fed to you and build on top of it until it creates its own internal logic that becomes unquestionable. Like, that's great improv. And that's good DMing. Good DMs are great improvisers. I just found some gritty bits that I need to get out of here. There. Do some cleanup over here. I thought I cleaned all this crap up. I'm a little surprised it's skewed like this. Making me a little paranoid that I did something wrong to my map. Nope, it looks like this is just a corner of the world that I forgot to clean up. Forgive me while I go on my mad tangent. Oh my god, super not prepped. I mean, not resolved. This is cray. Freaking reals, man. There. That feels better. Can't believe it. I thought I locked all this crap in. Alright, well, I mean, hey, it is what it is, right? We're just trying to make the best map we can. Like little artifacts like that is not the best we can be. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, if I can see it's wrong, then everyone else can obviously see it as wrong. Like, I'm the last one to ever know. It's like my paintings are constantly cheating on me. You're the last one to find out. 100%. Does it feel out of touch with a lot of DMs because improvisation within set boundaries rules is natural for me? But you're a pretty old school gamer, right? You came from you started in second edition. Am I crazy, or are you newer than that? Because like that's very first edition mentality. Like, you had to know how to improvise in the older editions because everything was like progressively generated. You were constantly guessing at what's next. Like, that's good dungeon design, like not knowing what's down those stairs and just allowing it to just be generated in the moment, and for you to be surprised along with it is what really made older school D&D like an art unto itself, like that performance theater sort of feeling. Somehow the message of that came out as being like some sort of a thespian, like an actor, but that's not it at all. I don't think so anyway. I'm not much of a voice actor or a method person or anything like that. I barely use backstories in adventures. But my skill set is very much improvised comedy. Like I understand the rules of improvisation. I've studied this subject because it makes me a better DM, and all it really teaches you is to be able to roll with punches. I'm only a 5e guy, but I was introduced to D&D by the Baldur's Gates game. I actually want to make a video about how old school games like those influenced me in modern D&D. Nice, man. I will look forward to seeing that happen. I like your content. God, it is really raining. God, look how sloppy this is. Just gonna do that. Pick up the pace. Fix all this crap. I guess I just missed it? I don't know. I won't pester you about your insights, because I'm sure it's going to be a badass video when you come out with it. But definitely let me know when you do, my dude. Because I love me some theory crafting, like DM skill sets. That shit's fun, man. I can talk about it all day. Better. It's looking better. Squiggly bit. Looking better. Oh, I can bounce him off you. Yeah, go right ahead, man. I don't mind at all. Looking for a remnant. I see some text scrolling. I'll check it out in a sec. I just want to clear my path. There. Task complete. All right, let's see this. Messy notes. No, don't worry about it. Basically, stream of consciousness. I like it. So, what we're looking at here, box enough idea. Here are some of my notes when I was brainstorming. Okay, great. So, level drain, no. Yeah, definitely not. No naming of difficulty curve, more forgiving system of permadeath, default, normally difficult below, core 2E rules, desired to kill high-level spellcasters and be aware of their protections. Interesting NPCs and dialogue decisions that don't matter too much. Reactivity. Love magic items. Oh, baby cakes. There we go. Okay with tracking inventory, but still made easier. Love bag of holding. Expect to sell loot and keep best loot. No thought for lighting smaller dungeons. Yeah, I can feel that. Combat focus and quest tasks. Combat focus and quest task tunnel vision, yes. No creativity out of a few very obvious options. Lack of interactivity makes players passive. Value movement speed. Messy notes. I think I'm getting the gist of some of this stuff. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. We're talking about a computer game, so they have to code everything that happens. So they can have some random variables like running across random encounters in an overland march, because you're transitioning from that static overland map from like as a point crawl, but in transition from point to point, you hit kind of like Phantasy Star or like Final Fantasy or whatever, where you get hit by the slime or whatever, and then it goes meow, and then now you're on your battle grid and you're doing your little fight scene in this etheric non-place, which is supposed to be someplace between those two bullet points. Like, you can code that shit out on a computer, but you have these absolute storylines that you have to hit, and the more you integrate, Planescape Torment was great at this, because it was so thick with different dialogue trees and quirky characters that weren't even necessarily important, but they just had so much shit to talk about that a lot of them were just utterly irrelevant to the storyline. But you kind of had to poke at all sorts of things, because you don't know which one is actually going to lead you to something, but it's all interesting. And the amount of language tree that had to be coded to make that crap work is staggering. And I don't think they really just build games like that anymore. Like, it's a huge investment just to dump in that many variables that may or may not actually be implemented into play. Like, just a whole world of content, like literally a whole world of content that you just aren't touching is just something that the industry just shan't afford anymore. Like, I would say Path of Exile has probably been the best to execute progressive map generation, because they have that whole mapping system. If you know Path of Exile, holy crap, PoE is just a fierce game. I was watching Baldur's Gate YouTube content, so it got me reflecting. Right on. I played the old ones, the old SSI second edition ones, like way back in yon day. I really don't have time for video games anymore, and I tried to get into just listening to Baldur's Gate Let's Play, but it's ponderously slow. Like, the only Let's Plays I can really tolerate is MTG Arena, because I'm familiar enough with the cards that I can listen to how it's playing out. But there's always new deck tech coming out, so it's the meta of how to create solutions on MTG card decks that I really enjoy a lot. So I can just listen to them talking about tech in general without necessarily having to spend any eye time actually looking at a screen. Like, when I finish the stream, I'm probably gonna watch like an hour of Legend VD and probably one or two of Covert Go Blue videos, because those are my two go-to guys when it comes to MTG tech building. So, but like linear games. Like I was listening to Portal for a while, just cause like I listened to like speedrun Portals, just the original Portal game, just because it was so snarky and it was fun, and the maps are pretty small, so once you get through it, it's just kind of fun to listen to all the little techie noises just kind of blooping around in the background. It's fun casual play, but big text trees are really difficult for me to invest any real time into. Just because I have so many freaking projects going on. But my dad got me into comics and TG cards, all kind of neat stuff. That's an awesome bonding, man. My dad was not into that stuff like at all. My dad was into patents and starting businesses and failing miserably at virtually all of them. Like, what I learned from my dad was, it doesn't matter how many times you fail, because it's just going to spin off new ideas. So I'd say the greatest thing my father gave to me, was do your best even if you're going to fail, because you don't know what you're going to unlock in the process of pushing yourself to the limit. Just push yourself. That's it. That's a pretty cool lesson. He was a military guy, Navy captain. He did. He was in pilot school during Vietnam to jump fighter ships off an airplane, off an aircraft carrier, but he got an ear infection, and it blew out his eardrum, so he couldn't pull more than 3 Gs without getting a migraine. So if they tried to launch him off of an aircraft carrier, it would make him black out. So he couldn't do it anymore. So like, you can do anything you want. And so he kept trying to get himself killed by like, he wanted to be a hovercraft pilot, and like, no, that the death on that is like 90%. You can't volunteer for that. You have to be told to do that. And he's like, well, I don't want to do helicopters. I guess I'll just go into intelligence. So he started running a code shop out of Puerto Rico, basically translating Navajo coming in, and he ran a crew of, I guess, 30 guys that were just tapping out code signal all day, and getting the assessment stuff, and then assessing what threats were there, and then reporting that upstream. And then he once he got to commander, he worked out of Japan. He oversaw a couple destroyers, and then once he advanced beyond that, he went back into out of active duty back into intelligence, and he ended up running the what is that all about? Hold on, I've got a weirdness. Oh, that explains it. Thank you. Yeah, he ended up doing the logistics for Desert Storm. He was in charge of moving the I guess the East Fleet. So he was in charge of the entire fleet. Like, they go here, they have to be here by this day. This is the resources they have to drop off. Like, he did all that shit. That was his last command before actually retiring. And then he went and got a teacher's degree, and he had already anyway. He did all that in the reserves. He's a hell of a guy. He was one of those old school guys that could just do anything that he wanted because he just figured out how to do it. It was amazing being around him. He was ridiculous. He passed away recently, so he's been on my mind a lot. He ended up having a brain tumor that when they took it out, he ended up having a stroke, and it knocked out most of his autonomic systems. Like, he couldn't breathe on his own, and he cashed in pretty quickly. He went into sleep, but he wouldn't have wanted to stay awake. So he was a hard man to be a kid for. Very demanding. He was one of those people that you don't find out about how much he appreciated until he's gone, and then you start reading stuff that he had written and stuff like that. So it's just, yeah, he was a hard person to live under, but he was an amazing person to know. And it's 9:17, so I've got 20 minutes left on my block. Don't mind the melancholy. It was an amazing funeral. He was surrounded by people that loved him. It was like 90 some odd people that showed up. He was a badass. He was a true badass. So I was a better man for having known him, to have been his kid. It was really cool. So that's really, he didn't connect with me on any level. Like, he didn't get me the first 30, 40 years of my life. He started to figure it out. And then he checked out. So I guess he got what he needed and he left. But, sorry about Dad's life. It's awesome that you were able to connect with your father that way. It amazes me. Because I'm 50-ish. So most of the folks at my age, a lot of them had a difficult time connecting with their parents. They were detached or PTSD'd without identifying it, or alcoholic for the same reason or whatever. So most of the people I know my age have had a horrible relationship with their parents and could barely count on them to be there for anything. So it always makes me happy to hear about other people that had an opportunity to really be able to connect with their parents at a level that's more than, eat your peas or I'll smack you. That is super cool, man. He just finished DMing Toma. Oh my god. Wow, that's so cool, dude. When did he start? When did he start playing? God, I can't. I ran a game. I ran a game for my cousin and her husband and 3 kids, and it was fun. But they're like, they like Stranger Things, so they came out with that Stranger Things box set, and it came with like a 40-page instruction manual. They're like, Phil, you play D&D, right? This is ridiculous. How the fuck are we supposed to play this game? Like, let me run a game for you guys, and I just made up something. And ran them through for like a 10-hour adventure over the course of 3 sessions. They're like, that was cool. We'll probably never play again, but we love doing this. He played when he was a teenager. Oh my god. He got into 5e because I did, and he had someone to play with again. Absolutely. This is his first time DMing for 5e. Nice. So yeah, he was like a red box guy like I was. That's fantastic. He probably actually has a few years on me. That's impressive. Mad props, man. That is so cool. I hope it's an addiction he falls right back into it. That's super cool. That is really tickling my satisfaction button. Did he just make up something, or did he run a pre-written? Oh, you said that. Sorry, total annihilations. Nice. Nice, man. Sorry, I dropped that ball. You told me. You ran the whole thing? Like the entire campaign? No excuses. Don't let me off the hook. No excuses. I can be better than this. If I don't hold myself to an impossible standard, who is? Now that my dad's gone, I really got to push myself to become impossible. He would appreciate that. It was nice enough to kind of cut to the end of the campaign. Didn't go too long, but we played for almost a year. Nice. Well, like maybe start at 9th level at the dungeon or something. I know there's hex crawls for. I haven't actually ran Tome. I've never played it either. I'm aware of Tome, but I haven't visited it in 5e. So as I understand it, there's a hex crawl that you can basically fuck around with until like 8th level or whatever, until you actually get to the dungeon, and then it's just death grind, right? Start at 3. Oh, okay. It takes me about 250 hours to go from level 1 to 20. So it taking you guys a year to get from 3 to 20 feels about right. Right on, man. That's awesome. Not a lot of people get to run a full 1 to 20 campaign. That is some rare air. Elite status. Well done, Dad. Well done. back up a bit. Once this when this post is on the DMsGuild, you'll be able to read the whole thing. It's like all these map assets and like all the tokens and shit that I'm building out for. You'll have to buy the adventure to actually get all of these assets, which is, you know, why you like, if you read the whole adventure, like, oh, that's pretty cool. It would be convenient if I had the assets. Then maybe you're willing to throw the coin at it to get them. But I mean, you know, if you want to hand draw your own maps and shortcut it. I was 12 when I started playing D&D, and I didn't have shit for money. So like I get it. Like if people don't have the money to spend on stuff, they should at least be able to read it. That way, you know, when they can afford it, they'll buy your shit. Especially if they've been using it for a couple of years. It's like, oh, I can finally afford to buy a book. Like Maze Rats, Questing Beast, Ben. I don't know his last name, but he created Knave. He also created Maze Rats. I've bought Maze Rats 3 times because it's only $3 and it's random. Its random generators are so good that if it takes more than like 4 minutes for me to find where I have it tucked away in my computer, I just go to DTRGB and just buy it again. It's $3 and I need the frickin' table now. Don't waste my time. It's $3. So I just keep buying it again and again. It's like, what was that thing? And I just buy it. It's just cheap. But like, yeah, I mean, people will support anything you do if you do it well. And I'm serious, Maze Rats is an amazing book. I have ran multiple D&D campaigns off of the random tables inside that book. Super light. It's just a 2d6. It's a full role playing game, like in 10 pages. It's based off of 2d6s, but it's the Gonzo environment, plot hook, spell, magical energy, creature type, random tables that are, which is like 8 out of the 10 pages. Just fantastic, super spontaneous. It does a really fun job using D6s together to have a wide variety of options. It's light, it's fun, it feels very, very 1E. It's incredibly OSR, which is what Questing Beast is all about. Highly recommend. Whew, man, it's going to be a while before I have an opportunity, but I am really looking forward to having the space to build the Ravnica hex crawl campaign. I want to build an urban hex crawl campaign toolbox, and Ravnica is the perfect setting for it because of, you know, the I don't know the word, a world-spanning city. Right? But half of it's in ruin at any given time because there's 20-mile-long worms that surface, destroy an entire district, and then sink back into the middle of the world again. Like these giant world worms just destroy everything, and Gruul worship them. The Gruul druids and shamans. They revere these massive creatures that are unstoppable, that just destroy miles and miles and miles worth of city in one go, and then they just disappear like a force of nature. So there's these wide swaths of what they call rubble belt, where you can see these strips, like from orbit, you can see like these long strips of where these world worms have gone through and just destroyed just hundreds of miles stretches of city that way. It's like it's going to take 400 years for us to rebuild all that crap. Was there anything important there? No. It's like, okay, we'll put it to the back of the list. Like, that's how Izzet thinks. It's so great. Oh, it's a great world. So I have the random generator built out, and I have a 3-dimensional complex generator that you can either build dropping down into a subsystem, or you can invert it and build skyscrapers going up. But they're all building dungeons, because there's so much city stacked on top of city, stacked on top of city, all packed together, that in any direction that you go, like you've got surface street, but that surface street could be a mile above where the actual bedrock is. So you have all this free float space at any level. Like you can just flesh out urban structure on top of ruins, on top of plateaus and open space that have been overgrown by nature. And then you can just have a floating island that's like an abandoned prison system that's got undead floating above it, that's like dropping shades and zombies on people. Like, well, that's a threat. We gotta deal with that. Like all sorts of different paths you can take, but it's the generator works. It's just I have to build it into a toolkit. And I really had to take a hot minute to look at that Dungeon 23 thing they got going on for building a mega dungeon. I won't be able to actually. I've got all these command projects on my plate to build out the leadership narrative for 5e again. But once that's cleared from my plate, I plan on taking that dungeon map a day sort of thing, and each week build a new either a new substructure for the sunken city or to build a new tower. So each week we can add another building to the block of the street, and we can randomize what guilds used to control it and what guilds control it now, and what level of dilapidation is it in, and what powerful resources are in the area that led to them building it in the first place as like a power center, as something to grab at. So I can build out a dungeon complex in a day just by throwing some dice around and mapping it out. So I could theoretically do that challenge and just build urban sprawl with it. And actually that'd actually be a really fun stream to conduct when I actually get around to building the toolkit, because it'd be a fun promo thing. You know, hey, we're building a toolkit. Let's build a new building today. Let's see how that fleshes out, and then, you know, we can just toss that on as another building, and we can just build infinitum. But the long-term goal, of course, would be to be able to actually build that out into a toolkit. I don't know how useful it would. I don't know how popular Ravnica really is. That would end up being a waste of money. But that's the kind of thing that I may theoretically just build as a toolkit and dump it on the DMsGuild, and then just create iterations of it over and over and over again, and put that stuff out on my Patreon or something for people to look at. I don't know. There's a ton of stuff that I can bore down super deep into detail with almost any of the system mechanics that I've built, but it's I know it has to have a broad enough appeal for people to actually want to buy it, regardless of how good it is. If people generally don't need new warlock options, then they're not going to buy a book of 15 warlocks built off of the gods of Theros. Like that, I know for a fact I'm not going to make a goddamn dime off of that, which is, it's a real shame. But the facts is the facts. You gotta but that's what a Patreon's good for. It's I just want to sling some stuff around, put out some ideas. I don't want to make anything formal out of it. I don't want to actually burn any resources to put this on the DMsGuild, but hey, I have this kit on the DMsGuild, and here's some fun shit you can tinker around with it here. I'm just posting this stuff on my Patreon, but if you really want to play with this stuff yourself, go buy the book. That's kind of how I want to, that's ultimately how I want to approach the stuff that I put on the DMsGuild, to basically just be an excuse to talk more about the shit that I like to do and to throw stuff around. Like on the martial powers things I've been doing for the past 2 weeks is pick a random subclass and then see how the martial powers that I've built, you can express what that archetype is supposed to be. And sometimes it's a great match, and some features is I don't have anything that this feature could duplicate, but it's so niche, I don't feel like I need to duplicate it. So like Ancestral Guardian, I don't have scry, but at 10th level, the barbarian gets a scry feature, as though one of his ancestors is watching over something, and he gets visions of what that ancestor is viewing. I don't have anything that directly translates into scry, but everything else in the Ancestral Guardian I was pretty much able to hit with a martial power. So I'm okay with not being able to 100% reproduce this. That gives you a reason. That gives me a reason to say, you know, if you want to play an Ancestral Guardian, there's great reasons to play Path of the Ancestral Guardian. This is something that you could like build a ranger that uses Ancestral Guardian powers, so you can express your ranger as though he were using the Ancestral Guardian, and like you can make him like a Gloomstalker or something, and you can make his background like all of his ancestors were slain by Drow, so now he's obsessed over hunting Drow in the Underdark, but all his power kit is built out to be Ancestral Guardian. So when he's channeling powers and he's manifesting abilities, it's all being depicted as ancestors guiding his bow, or like he's seen through the eyes of the dead, so he can see through the dark. Like his past ancestors are guiding him down these tunnels. Like a paladin Ancestral Guardian. If you take, like, if you literally took what is it? Oath of God. What is the word I'm looking for? You know what I'm talking about. It's not of ancestors. It's something like I'm blanking on it. But what is that? What is that paladin oath? Of the ancients? Was it ancients? No, shit. Anyway, it's the one where like you have like your oath is to preserve your people's way of life, and like the Ancestral Guardian is a super cool way of like potentially expressing that. Barbarian Ancients, yeah, the Ancients Paladin. Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, like making Ancestral Guardian abilities for a Paladin, so that his Ancients Paladin is doing all this spirit flotilla of pain. You know, it's super neat. Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, I can like with the martial powers thing, you can build a kit of, you get 15 powers from level 1 to 20. And the Ancestral Guardian only took 8 for me to be able to express with the martial powers, but it took 11 for me to express the Cavalier, the Fighter Cavalier class. It was much more, because the Cavalier has more, it's a fighter, so it's got more subclass level to begin with. But beyond that, it's just got more, and its features are more involved in general. So it took more powers for me to be able to express the Cavalier than it took for me to express the Bavarian's Ancestral Guardian. But they were both able to do it. And so next Monday, the lunch stream will be just picking a random rogue archetype and seeing how well the powers that exist currently can express that rogue archetype, regardless of whether you're playing a rogue, a monk, a barbarian, a fighter, a ranger, or a paladin. Because they all share the same spell list. Anyway, ramble. Uh-oh, that's my timer. Shit. All right, well, it looks like my day is done. And I got to step out. Thank you. I'm going to cheat for just a second and stick around just to hit my buttons a little bit more. We spent a lot of time adding this crystal mess onto the floor, but we haven't spent a lot of time scraping it all out. So here's what we had done to scrape a lot of this stuff out. But for now, we just get to fill in all this. Anywhere I've got an obstacle that you can't move through, I want to have crystals stacked up along the wall, because it's a seam, and that's a natural place where, like, it's because it's constantly raining in this adventure. So all these puddles that are pouring off these walls, they would just make these puddles that these crystals spawn inside of, like evil fungus. Yeah, man. Thanks for being here, Flutes. It's good to spend time with you, dude. But I'm going to... Alright, we're going to go ahead and stop there. So, when we come back, we'll be back in the morning for our morning coffee stream before my job. I'll have roughly a 2-hour window. We just finished the Light of Zarax's Tower, Citadel of Light map. So I want to go back to working on tokens, black and white tokens, and then color overlay for VTT and for easy printing. We got like maybe 4 or 5 more unnatural creatures from Boo's Menagerie for us to finish illustrating, and then we're going to get into the ships. So I suspect we're going to start doing ship tokens probably by this time next week, and then we have another asteroid map for the Nyogi Death Spider Challenge. And that'll be the last map that we have to make for Spelljammer. We have, once this map is done, we've got the underground laboratory that we need to add this similar texture and coloring to. And once that's done, then we have the village in Act 1 where everything starts. We have that laid out, but we need to actually do all the fancy color stuff. So those 2 maps are still on our plate, and then we need to do all the tokens. And I suspect by the time both of those projects have all the tokens and the maps done, I think I'll probably be getting the final manuscript back from my editors for both of those projects, which probably means I'll be doing page layout for both of them. And then once the pages are laid out for the books, then we'll know what gaps are open on each page for us to then import that page as a PSD here into Photoshop, and we'll just paint whatever the hell that page is talking about. We'll just put in spot art that's relevant to the page, and we'll just see how the thing ends up. So it's always a bit of a mystery how each project's going to end, but you can, like I said, you can check the DMsGuild link that I have in the description down below, and look at all the artwork and all the mechanics and stuff that I built for the 5-color mana spell point variant rule systems that I have on the DMsGuild. And you can see where these ideas lead us to, and what they can mean for your table, and what you can do with them. And so, yeah, my day is done. I hope y'all have a great night. Like and subscribe if you're still around, because I do this every day but Sunday. So this is the kind of crap that I do as a side hustle. So help me hustle. Like, subscribe, watch some content so I can get my hours of watch up. And if anything's catching your fancy, drop me a line either in the messages down below, or catch me on Twitter and follow me there. Or if you know where to find me on the Discord, give me a shout. And looking forward to seeing you. So, good night, guys. Where'd my mouse go? It's time to press. Oh, my pen is on the thing. I can't move my mouse if I have my pen on.